Welcome, everyone. My guest today is the great Joe Franco. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome my very special guest, the ever youthful and the ever handsome Joe Franco. And there he is.
Congratulations, John. That's just amazing.
Well, thank you.
You're a great host. This is like the Tonight Show for drummers, and
Oh,
you
man.
are our Jimmy Fallon.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. When I wanted to tell you about this last week, and I probably should have, because it wasn't like it was a giant secret, but we were still working out the details. David Frangione and myself, and we had our big high powered lawyers in the room with us, so we had to be careful about it. But I did want to tell you ahead of time, and like I told you when we were offline, we had all this commotion going on at my house today with workers here from the early morning hours right up until just now. So anyway, it's exciting to do this first show with you, given your
Well,
history.
again, I'm really excited to be here and excited to see you, John. We haven't seen each other in probably since a Modern Drummer Festival, or
I
I
know.
can't
I
remember.
I
Cutting
can't
Room,
even.
maybe.
Cutting room maybe,
Oh,
or a
Cutting
NAM show
Room when
maybe.
you announced your retirement from Zildjian.
Wow. So that was the last time. You haven't
How
been to
long?
NAM? That's coming up. I left at the end of 2012, so coming up on 10 years
Oh, I've
probably.
seen you. Yeah, I must
I
have
think
seen you at
so.
NAM. Yeah, yeah.
I think so, yeah. I was thinking, Joe, uh, I don't, it's funny to say this, but I'm going to just say it. You're like the happiest guy I know. I think I'm a pretty happy guy, and I know a lot of happy guys. Like, we both know Greg Bissonette's a happy guy, but you're probably the happiest, like most upbeat, positive guy that every time I see you, this is what you look like right now, what we're all seeing. It's that face. It's
Well,
that face.
thanks. There's a lot to be happy about. I feel very blessed to be amongst the drummer community. And things are good. I'm very optimistic about everything. So I guess it's a good thing for a drummer.
I did. Well, we're gonna get to a lot of stuff, but my history with you, and I've told you this. The first time I met you, I wasn't working for Zildjian. I was still. It was sort of the end of my time at Drum Workshop. I had moved back from L.A. and I was Don's East Coast artist relations and sales guy at DW. And I want to say it was Zildjian Day at DeCenzo's Drum Shop, or it was something that Dick DeCenzo in Quincy, Massachusetts had you for a drum clinic around 1988.
John, I was going to wear, and I can't find it. I was going to wear my DiCenzo Drum Shop sweatshirt that I still
Ah,
have somewhere. I combed the whole, I can't find it
ah,
because I know how you like to wear appropriate sweatshirts and t-shirts,
yes,
and
yeah,
I just couldn't find it. But yeah, that's where we met. That shop was pretty small,
right.
and there were like a zillion drum kits, and somehow we put this big
I know.
double kick, premier kick with toms galore, and in the middle of it,
Yeah,
and Lenny DeMusio. Hey Joey, baby, this is gonna be great. This is good, and I walk in, I can hardly get in the.
I know. And Dick, I remember too. And then Dick ended up getting like 100 and something people in there on top of that. Like you got that drum kit in there. You played your ass off, by the way, as you always do. And I had never seen you play before. I knew who you were from your legendary book, which was, I want to say this was 1988. So the book had already been out a few years, and it
Yeah,
was like it
83,
was the
84. Yeah.
yeah, and no disappointment. You were so nice. I introduced myself, and you said you said something like, "Oh yeah, yeah, tell Lombardi I said hi," or something like that. I said I work for Drum Workshop or something. You said, "Oh yeah, tell Lombardi I said hi." I think you were using the DW pedals at that time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
um,
I switched over to the 5000s years ago, way before I started playing DW drums,
yeah, yeah.
and I still use them. Yeah.
That's yeah, you know, I, I'll say it. Tom Myers is watching, so I'll
Hey, Tom.
A big hello to Tom because Tom
Tom, I
was
got all your premier snares over there. See, there's a Twisted Pink and Purple Widowmaker and all that stuff you gave me. Thanks.
yeah, yeah. Tom's a good man, and he was the man behind Premiere for many, many years in the U.S. and had a lot of great artists like yourself and Rod Morgenstein and Clem Burke and and I was just going to
Tommy
say
Price.
Tommy Price. Yeah, you guys were representing in those days, and I just remember thinking like these drums sound great, you sound great. It took me a while to finally get hip to Premiere, but to actually get a set, which was only just last year. But anyway, yeah, that was a great time. And then I think it was 6 months later, I started working at Zildjian, and I met you not long after that, and instantly, I think you came up to Boston another time to do something, another clinic or something, or maybe you came to the
Berkeley,
shop.
maybe. I
It
did
might
a
have been
couple at
okay.
the Performing Arts Center at Berkeley.
That's okay. That must have been because Lenny and I went,
Yeah.
and that's when I really got to hang with you, and yeah, you just like this happy, like, and working all the time, always with this would have been late '88. Were you still with Twisted Sister? That was still, yeah,
87, 88, yeah. In the late 80s, I did a lot of different things, you know.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it could have been that era, yeah.
yeah. It was, and then Widowmaker came after that. I remember I
Yeah.
still have the CD. That's kill that band should have been, like a mega huge. It's the music business, of course, but
Yeah, yeah,
great band.
that was my favorite band. It just had everything, I thought, but the problem with selling an 80s rock star in the 90s, we were getting into that
Yeah,
Seattle thing, and which I loved, but we were history, so it was tough to be commercially successful at that time for as we got lumped into hair bands,
yeah, yeah. I
uh,
know that's a tough one because you guys were more than that. You guys were like like serious players. A group of like really great musicians that. But I know
well,
what you're
thank
saying.
you.
Yeah. It was a lot of bands sort of got lumped into a bag of like, well, that was that genre that's not happening now, and it's this. And if Dave Abraziz is watching, it's your fault. You and Pearl Jam. No.
But all the good stuff that came out of that era, Soundgarden, one of my
Yeah,
favorite
yeah,
bands. I love
absolutely.
that band. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I mean, but you were always like, I know we were talking the phone, and you were always doing something. You were always working, and then at some point, by my recollection, maybe the mid '90s, you started doing like a ton of session work. Is that when you started Beat Street, your own studio, and started
Well,
producing?
I started, after Twisted, I did a lot of, I didn't have a steady band. That record was not successful, the last Twisted record. And I was doing a record with D, a band called Envy, before we went out and played with Twisted. And Dee told me, look, I want to do this album with Twisted, but I want to do my own band after this, and I want you to play drums. That wound up taking way longer than we thought, but that was Widowmaker, you
Right.
know. But between there was, 4 or 5 years. And during that time, I played with a lot of really cool guitar players, Vinnie Moore and Blue Saraceno and Leslie West. And, I love that. I like playing with guitar players. I mean, we just
Yeah.
we just bond and so that was a really exciting time for me to not be in a steady band so I can do all this other stuff. So that was like late 80s, and by early 90s, Widowmaker started coming together. But yeah, but during that time, I did a lot of educational stuff. I love doing drum clinics and just, you know, sharing with drummers, that's nothing more fun than that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I opened my studio because sometimes life gets in the way, and basically I had my studio in my loft and I had my drums down the block in the studio I shared with Jonathan Mover,
Hmm.
and a studio called Smash. It used to be on 22nd Street. I lived on 22nd. Jonathan was on 26th. We chatted at a NAMM show. Geez, I just got this place in the city. I need a place to play drums. So we bonded. We took a room. We both set up mega drum kits, and then I took one of my old Ludwig kits as a student kit. So each of us taught one day a week, and it paid the rent, and we had a place to
Yeah.
bang out, you know. So that was my acoustic drums, and then my all my studio stuff was in my loft. Then I met my wife, greatest thing that ever happened to me. She's fabulous, can't say enough. Um, and we started having kids, you know. Yeah, so there went my home studio.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I took my home studio and my drums, and I just basically I walked a couple of blocks down the Broadway and found a place. I said, "Yeah, this is pretty cool," and I just called it Beat Street. Um, Set up my drums, had my recording gear, and it evolved into a pretty cool little studio where I can actually play on records in the comfort of the home. You know, so
Yeah.
that's how that whole thing started.
I remember you telling me a story when you first started doing records and producing, sessions and stuff there that, your kids were born and I remember you telling me a story about how I'd walk my daughter to school, like, down the street, drop her off at school and then go to my studio and work. And
Yeah.
I just thought like, man, how could it ever be any better than that, you know? Like,
Yeah, yeah, and I had my earbuds in, and I'd be, just living on music, and then, if I got there early enough where no one was there, I'd play for a while,
yeah.
and then, yeah, but it really evolved into something really great for myself because, the early '90s were tough, like I said, Widowmaker had a tough time, and here I am starting a family, and what do I do now? Well, I used to do a lot of stuff on the side for Sesame Street,
Mm,
and
right, right.
they had a house band Sesame Street, but when they did off thing, like they'll do Big Bird Gets Lost, on VHS, that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and they needed music, so they were allowed to go outside of the house band to do the off projects, not the actual television show. So I met this really great guy, Paul Jacobs, and Chris Surf, and I did a lot of things for them for Sesame Street. And they approached me one day and said, "We're doing this new show called Between the Lions. We're partnering with WGBH in Boston and doing a show, a children's show, very much like Sesame Street,
Yeah.
puppeteers and all that. And we want you to play drums." I said, "Well, you know what? I just put this really cool studio together. You might want to record me here." And they came down to the studio and they were like, "We could do the whole show here."
Oh,
Yeah, I know. That started my second career, where I have this amazing run that's still going. I mean, we do like Blues Clues, and we do a lot of these popular show. We do a bunch of things with Sesame Street, and at the same time, I play drums there, and played on a
us.
bunch of records there. So it was really it was you telling me I'm a happy guy. There's a lot to be happy
I
about
know. Yeah.
because here
Yeah.
I am. I'm bringing these kids into the world, and I'm bringing them down to meet Big Bird, and doing that Between the Lines. They filmed the same place that Sesame Street did. So it was like just one big happy puppeteer family, and I got to play drums on the show, and the show has amazing music. It wasn't like, let's talk down to kids, it
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
reading show. And so our background singers were the Vowels. And the Vowels were now Nikki Richards. I mean, New York's finest. Paulette McWilliams. Yeah, and so we got to. It was like making records. We got to play, not only do the underscore for the show, but do about 10 songs a week. And so it was just like,
Awesome. Yeah.
how cool is that?
That's
Unfortunately, it's not like that anymore. This was the late 90s.
yeah.
Budgets shrank, and now it's kind of like people are phoning in the music, and we still make great television, but back then it was like being in a band.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but anyway, that's how I got my foot in the door, and this whole Beat Street thing has become a great thing.
Is there anything, it's just like this is the most, broad sort of question I know, but I mean, is there anything you could share with people that as a sort of like way to, people I'm sure are dying to know how you get your foot in the door. Like how could someone um, create an opportunity like that for themselves? I mean, is there anything you can share that could be other than just, I know
Well,
you have to be in a
it's
good,
tough. Yeah, I mean, having a name in New York City certainly helped. I mean, it's a big city. There's a lot
yeah,
going
yeah,
on. And that really helped. But I mean, getting into the TV thing, I got in as I was just a drummer,
yeah, yeah,
but I knew a bunch about gear because, the funny thing happened in the mid '80s. You know, dance music was really popular, right? And dance music, the kick drum was like boom, like in your face. Like rock drummers was
yeah.
like, oh, I want my kick drum to sound like that. And so long story short, rock drummers started, replacing drums with samples and programming stuff. And I got into programming. I got into programming because I started losing gigs. I remember doing Fiona's second record, and we had 6 or 7 songs done, and Bo Hill, who produced it, said, "Okay, I'm bringing in a programmer for the other three. We're gonna program it." Huh?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
my band. Like this is, and that hit me. That hit me
yeah,
really hard. And at that point, they had this drum machine because Lynn drum, it was
yeah.
just like everything sounded the same. But that was the point. It was about '86. Um, Emu came out with this SP12.
I remember it.
And
Yeah,
with the SP12, you can put your own sounds in, you can make your own snare, you can make your own hi-hat, you can make that was interesting to me because the drummer could be creative in thinking like a drummer. Okay, I'm going to do 12 hi-hat samples. I'm going to do that one, that one, that one. I'll do it with my left hand. I'll crossfade them. I'll map them out on my drum CAD or my Octapad or whatever that I was using back then, and really put the drummer smarts into that. And it was really a fun period, and it caught the attention of a well-known producer at the time, Rick Wake, and who had just had some success with Taylor Dane's record, her first record,
mm-hmm.
and he asked me to do her second record. And meanwhile, I had like 2 number 1 songs on that
Yeah,
record,
yeah,
and that snowballed. And then, oh man, I'm taking this guy with me. He did Celine Dion and Diana Ross, and I played on all those records. Mariah Carey's first record, we arranged that together.
yeah,
Me and Rick, and that gave me. Here's the thing happens when you're doing programming. You're on this side of the glass. You're not the
yeah,
guy in there with headphones, and after every take you turn around and hope no one's laughing, and you're you're on the other side, and
yeah,
then you're in a different mode. You're like, oh, what does that do? And what does that do? And so I started getting into being a gearhead.
yeah,
And
yep,
so that helped me when I put Beat Street together. I kind of knew gear. So what do you tell somebody to a drummer starting out? I don't know. It's an evolution.
yeah.
It's a constant evolution. And I went with that. And like what I was telling you before about like dance records and drummers wanting to have the big sound, that was another technology that was happening. They had these samplers like the F16. I don't know if you heard of that, Ben Forat. He had this
Oh, I
sampler
remember. I
where
remember Forat. Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
so he had this device where you take the drum sound off tape and it spits back a sample. So you can take a real drum performance and make it sound big like those like disco records,
yeah,
only it's
yeah,
rock. But then it became a real fine line. Hey, dude, you're going to have big drum sounds like that. You better play really simple, and you got to play with a click.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to play really simple. I'm going to play with a click, and it kind of blurred the line between programming and drumming to a certain sense, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, I'm babbling. You know, I
No,
hope this
this
is
is
interesting to
absolutely it
everyone.
is. No, it is because I think what you're saying really is that like you gotta jump on this stuff kind of early on. Like if somebody's interested in doing what you're doing, they gotta dig in and do the homework about the gear and you know knowing how to have a home studio and how to run a home studio and it's not a question of just
It just opens up more doors, you
yeah.
know. And now in this COVID era, if you're not home, you know, with some kind of a mic setup or some kind of a, you know, you can't record, you know.
Yeah.
Now hopefully this is behind us, you know. The more I read, the more people are saying this is going to be a seasonal flu. Every fall, you get your flu shot, and it's not going to leave us. But you know, we're going to get out and start rocking again. You know, and
Exactly.
I'm so
Yeah.
happy to see people starting to do that. You know, but anyway, the point is, during this time, it's nice to be able to be creative at home and be able to make records and be able to do that in the comfort of home. And yeah, I think drummers have to be more than, you know, paradiddles, you know, more than, you know, I
Yeah.
say that, but meanwhile, John, I've turned into a pad nerd.
I'll bet your chops are crazy great. I mean, they were always good, but I mean,
Well,
so
no, you know, I was never happy. I was never happy with my grip. I was never happy with, you know, I actually, to tell you a funny story, I took a couple of drum lessons from Tony Williams, okay? And
wow.
Tony was like, "Oh, you play really heavy and powerful, but you got to hold the sticks back here. You know, you got to play with your hands. I don't want to, not with your fingers, not with your, you got to play with your hands, you know?" So that got me into this thing, you know, and what was the result of it? I mean, it was great and it was powerful and it was great for playing with, you know, the D. Snyders and the people I played with for many years. But wow, I developed a really serious tendonitis, like left hand right over here, you know, and
Okay.
I
Yeah.
know other drummers have this problem because I've spoken to so many of them. Anyway, I read this thing one day in Modern Drummer about this teacher down in Texas, Bill Bachman,
Yeah.
and amazing, amazing cat. And I saw them out, and I started taking some lessons from him. And he kind of turned my grip around a little bit, where now I could play 2 or 3 hours and nothing hurts. It's
No
so
kidding.
great. Yeah. And so I started studying with Bill. I mean, I'm on a little bit of a hiatus now, but like, I go
He's
in
great. Yeah.
Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. I turn on my Zoom and it's Bill, and we have our pads out, and it's so much fun, you know. What am I doing this for? I don't know. It makes me happy.
Yeah. Well, that's what we do as drummers. Hopefully, is we
Yeah.
try to improve. And
It's never ending.
yeah, yeah. I
It's
during the pandemic when it started 2 years ago, I started studying with a friend of mine, a local drummer. We did it through our iPhones.
yeah.
Chris Anzalone, his name is, and he's left-handed like me, and I thought, well, if nothing else, it'll be a little easier to sort of translate what he's doing as another left-handed drummer. Not that I couldn't from a right-handed drummer, but anyway, it was a similar thing. We've taken a bit of a hiatus, but I was never really a reader, and I had a little basic understanding from years ago, and he sort of brought me into the fold, so to speak, and yeah, I think it just felt good to be doing something to improve. I totally get what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah, it makes you feel good. You know, I mean, I
yeah.
do these things. I'm going through the Gattermans. Oh my God,
Oh yeah.
it'll take me a week to really get a page, because you know, everyone could play a flam paradiddle and all that kind of stuff, but the way he presents everything in that book, everything's displaced. So you're not starting on a downbeat, you're starting a 16th note later. And making that feel good, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
man,
Yeah.
when you nail page after page, it's a great feeling.
That's awesome. Yeah, when talking to everybody that doesn't know, we're talking about Steve Gadd's book Gaddaments, and and we, I was yeah, it's awesome, and I've got a copy in the other room, and I haven't, to be honest, I haven't tried to go through it very recently, but for a while I was, and I was figuring out the stickings like you say, but making it feel good, forget it. I never got close to that show. I could go, okay, I see what he's doing here. And he would say to me, how you doing with it? Man, it's not that hard. And I'd be like, Steve, it's not that hard for you. You know who you're talking to here.
But anyway, I developed a whole new appreciation, for rudimental drumming. I never played in drum corps. I never, I always had my own rock band, So on
Yeah.
weekends we rehearsed, and played. I couldn't go playing in football games. I was doing my own thing. But like, I don't look down at drum corps. It's just that at the time when I would have been doing that sort of thing, I was playing in bands. But I love rudiments because, every drummer's dream is for their weak hand. I won't say left hand because I know there's lefties watching. Their
My
weak
right
hand to
hand.
be
Yeah.
as good as their strong hand.
Yeah.
So rudiments are, each hand works out the same, and yeah, and that's a cool thing. But here's the catch: the more you practice, the good hand gets better as well. So you're
Yeah.
still catching
I,
on.
I was gonna say, yeah, I know. It's for me, it's a catch 22. When I start spending a lot of time in the pad, I feel like, wow, my left hand feels, but there's still a big difference between how weak my right hand is. So
It's a vicious cycle.
it is. It is. Okay, so talking about practice, and by the way, I got to shout out to a few people that are watching. Um, Jeremy Dreesen, I didn't realize you knew Jeremy. He's a friend of mine from the vineyard,
Yeah,
and
he comes over to borrow a snare drum stand every now and then.
keep your eye on him because
Yeah.
he'll keep that snare stand if you're not careful. But our dear friend Therese DiMuzio, daughter of the great Lenny DiMuzio, is watching, and she said, "I remember the way back Fiona Goodrats gigs, sending hugs and kisses to one of the most positive, happy souls." Absolutely, Therese. Absolutely. And I'm going to just throw this out here right now, Joe, because I had you in mind about this for this future episode, which you'll be part of. I'm telling you right now, we're going to do a tribute to Lenny DiMuzio, remembering Lenny DiMuzio down the road. And
Great.
I was way back when I had Vinny Colaiuta on the show. We were talking about Lenny, as we always do, and he said, I said, I'm going to do something with Lenny, and he said, oh, I want to do it with you. I want to be part of it. And I started thinking about you, Adam Nussbaum, of course, Therese. I mean, just, and then the number got to be about 30 people that would want to be part of this. So it may be 2 episodes, but anyway, we're going to do something.
Oh, that I
Yeah,
I I I could talk about Lenny all day. Yeah,
I know, I know.
I'd love that.
He loved you. He absolutely loved you. You were Joey Franco.
He's like
Yeah,
Uncle Lenny.
yeah, Uncle Lenny. He was Uncle Lenny to my kids. I know, I know. He really was. He was. I'll just tell you this quick, funny Lenny story that we all have a million. But when my kids were really little, I mean, I was only at Zildjian a short time, and they'd come and visit me. Lenny's office was. Lenny had the best office. He was in the sort of back. You remember,
I
like
remember it.
behind,
Yeah.
yeah, behind the conference room, and he had this. It was like it was, I won't say a man cave, but it was like this cool, he just had it all off on his own. And my kids would wander back there. They knew where it was. Like I'd be in my office on the phone or something. They'd wander back there because Lenny had candy on his desk in like a little jar or like in a little tray. And they'd disappear and then come back chewing on a butterscotch candy, And I'd be like, guys, leave Lenny alone. Lenny's like, Johnny, don't worry. No, it's okay. Have him come in. It's okay. He was the best. He was just absolutely the best.
That handshake,
Oh, the never-ending handshake. Yeah,
never. It
yeah.
it was warmth.
It was. It
That
was.
handshake was just, you
Yeah,
know.
It really did. You're right. It was so, and he would just hold your hand and say, "Yeah, Joey, your chops are way up there, Joey. Chops are really up there." Yeah.
Well, I'll save my stories for the Lenny episode
Okay.
because
Yeah.
I've got some great ones.
Good. Good.
But yeah, well, rest in peace, my friend.
Rest in peace. Yeah, absolutely. Well, but when you were talking about, practice and reading, I wanted
Yeah.
to quote Lenny, jump back to how you got started. And I'm assuming you studied as a young drummer. I mean, you took lessons and got the basics to reading and so
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I have, a very unique story. These four guys from Liverpool were on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I saw that, and it changed my life. I don't know if
Okay.
anybody else has that
I
story, but
I doubt
uh,
it.
yeah. And basically, well, I had a good scene because my uncle, who we lived in the same house, we were one of the Brooklyn Italian households where grandma and grandpa lived on one floor, my uncle lived on another floor, we lived on, one of those scenes.
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
once my uncle got married, the drums just stayed down the basement because he used to have club date bands. And so we just had a drum set up there, and I was, curious, but it was those guys from Liverpool. And then it was like, I had my little Victrola, they call them the Victrola, and you put the record on, and I put it right in back of me. And I played with my Beatles songs, and that my uncle saw that, and he's saying, wow, because he taught me my first two beats, the twist beat and the jazz beat. The, the
Is the
twist
twist
beat
like
was da, da, da,
yeah, yeah.
da, da, and the jazz beat, ding, 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 ding. And those two beats, I can play the whole Beatles album, Can't
Yeah.
Buy Me
Yeah, yeah,
Love,
absolutely.
and,
Yeah.
and all the rockers with, you didn't have to play 2N, even if you play 2 and 4. But that gave me my foundation. And so I started playing with my Beatle records that I got to take it for lessons. And, because my dad was working all the time. My uncle was younger, and he was kind of like a big brother to me. So he took me for my first lessons, and I was 12. And I met my first band there because, these guitar players that were taking guitar lessons there needed a drummer their age and
Yeah.
hooked us together. And that was my first band. And I had a band, forever, ever since.
Yeah.
The first drum teacher, because she asked me about lessons, he was lame. I mean, he took out books. He'd be smoking. Back then, smoking a
Yeah.
cigarette like this
Yeah.
little room. It's like that.
Just on a pad, right? Probably just had you working out on a
Never
pad all
got
the
on the
time.
drum.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I learned by ear. The guy that really turned it around for me, you'll love this. Um, I went and saw Carmine Appice's very first drum clinic. Very first.
Wow.
It was in a basement in Hempstead, Sam Ash Hempstead. And, I was a huge Cactus fan. And at the time, he was, middle Cactus, like I think it was between the second and third album. And he was just, signing Sam Ash, Carmine Appice Drum Clinic, So I was just like, a kid, so I guess let me think about this. Maybe I was 16 or something. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. So I went to this drum clinic, and you can imagine, I mean, at that point, I've seen a couple of concerts, but to be this close to a real powerhouse player,
Sure.
and I
Yeah.
was like, holy shit, this is like,
Yeah.
and at the end of the show, I says, man, do you give lessons? And he says, sure. He gives me his number,
Yeah.
And so I used to go to Carmine's house every week. And he
Awesome.
got me on the syncopation and stick control and Jim Chapin and those books.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was really the first time I studied with books. And then at the time, I'd be taking a drum lesson, Jeff Beck be calling. I'd be like, oh man, this guy's so cool. Um, so
Oh
then he went
man.
on the road with Jeff Beck at BBA, and he hired he had one of his students take over for him. And his name was Joe Markowski, rest in peace. He
Oh,
amazing drummer. Got on my hands, all my doubles, everything. He got the whole trip together. Then I was on a kick and I started studying. I studied, I told you I took a couple lessons from Tony.
yep.
I took some lessons from Andrew Cyril. I mean,
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I would go into someone who played completely different than I,
Completely. Yeah.
and see what can I would do Tony Williams, Seven Steps to Heaven, and even Miles
Yeah.
Davis records, and I was getting in tune to that stuff then because I don't know, I was a rock guy, and so for me, high school was Hendrix and Cream. That was religion, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go to the Fillmore every weekend. Clive Bunker, those guys meant so much to me.
What a time. Yeah.
What 1967 was midway through high school, and think about 1967.
Oh, I know.
All you
I know.
experienced Disraeli gears, and Hendrix Cream, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
You had the West Coast, Beach Boys and Janet and Dean and all that.
The
that,
Doors
that.
were just
But
starting to
then
happen.
then the second wave of West Coast, Doors, Airplane, Dead, and all that stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
It was such an amazing year for music.
Sergeant Pepper. I mean, the
Sergeant
Beatles
Pepper,
were still making great records. Yeah.
first Pink Floyd, first Procol Harum, Jethro Tull.
Yeah. Yep.
It was,
And I think Deep Purple might have been 68, but I mean, right
yeah.
on the cusp of that.
68, yeah.
Yeah.
Deep Purple
Yeah.
came a little bit after that.
Yeah.
Fudge was 67,
Yep.
very
Yeah,
first
that's right.
Fudge.
Yep. Yep.
67 was a magical year. But anyway, what I was getting at is like my whole development was like I was a rock guy, but you get into Cream, and all of a sudden Cream breaks up, and Jack Bruce goes on to play with this guy Tony Williams. Well, I wasn't listening to Miles back then. I had no idea who Tony Williams was, but I went out and I bought Turn It Over. That 6/8 thing, oh my God, you can actually hear the pedals squeaking and the hi-hat playing eighth notes. That blew my mind. That opened up a whole different thing. And I think in the 70s, I was kind of a rock snob because that spoiled me. And then, on the heels of that with Mahavishnu, Return to Forever, and all
Oh
that
man.
stuff
Yeah.
started happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to study from everyone I could and try to open things up. Norm Grossman, and that's a name that you don't hear because he was an educator, but he used to teach at Ippolito's when Ippolito was on the 8th Avenue, the old
Yeah.
Ippolito's.
Yeah.
And I studied there for a while, and he really got my reading together. He can make a pad sound like an orchestra. I mean, those guys that just have that touch,
Yeah.
That was
Absolutely.
Norm Grossman, and rest in peace. I know these guys are gone. God.
Yeah. I've heard his name too, Joe. I
Yeah.
never met him, but I've definitely heard that name. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
Norm Grossman was one of the, and everyone taught there. Everyone hung out at
yeah.
Ippolito's, A Chapin would come in and crash your lesson, and it was a good time, I mean, and everyone, Elvin would hang out at Ippolito's, and Mel Lewis, everyone,
Yeah.
was there. It was such a scene.
I know.
Um,
I've heard those stories about Elvin, just like
he just hung
just
up
saying,
by the.
yeah, he'd say to you, "Come here, let me show you something, or play me something," and then he'd basically give you a lesson right there at the counter, And so when you were talking about like when you're 16 and all
Yeah.
these, everything was so impressionable, and had you started playing double bass drums at that point, or
No,
you were still?
no, that wasn't on my radar until, yeah, well, 16, it was
Was
Ginger
it
Baker,
Carmine? Ginger
Toad.
Baker. Yeah.
It was
Okay.
Baker. Well, Baker did it first. Ginger Baker. I heard Toad, and I was like, "Whoa, what's that?"
Yeah.
And he was playing a role between his floor tom and his kick drum. So I got that down. I got, just between my floor tom and my
Yeah.
kick, my right hand and right foot, right?
And can I just make a
Go
point
ahead.
that and I know that maybe people don't know is Ginger had two different size bass drums, so they actually sounded very different when you
Yeah.
played them that way, and it gave that impression of like it could be a bass drum and a floor tom. But anyway, sorry.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't think of it like that at all. But yeah, Ginger used to use a 24 on his left and a 22 on his right, or was there the 22 and the 20? But I know
It might be a
the left
22 and a
one,
20. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, the left one was bigger, you know.
yeah,
But I heard that and I thought that's what he was doing. And then I saw a picture of them and they had two bass drums. I was like, whoa,
yeah, yeah.
now
I
that's cool.
I know.
But
Yeah.
I took a stab at it. I bought another bass drum. I had my Ringo kit and I added another bass. My ring,
I saw. Ooh, look at that. Yeah.
that's a 67 Ludwig. I actually have the quiet cymbals and the quiet heads, you know, because my home theater is like in the next room, and you know, like
Yeah.
someone's in a movie, you can play on that thing, and it's great. And I just like seeing it because I cut my teeth on it. I like
Absolutely.
walking
Yeah.
past it every day, you know. So anyway, double bass. So Ginger influenced me. Carmine played the same way Ginger did in that. You know, I shouldn't say it that way. It had the same roots where the left foot was the timekeeper. Most of the guys from that era, they were so used to playing like eighth notes on their hi-hat. So when you added the second bass drum, you just start playing eighth notes on the second bass drum because you had that down already.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you'd play in between on your right foot, you know, and all of them, the Carmine, Ainsley Dunbar, everyone from that era, all the jazzers, the left foot was always your timekeeper, whether you were playing 2 and 4 or quarter notes or eighth notes, that was your timekeeper. So
Yeah.
they put that over there and then worked around it, you know. So like if you were playing a shuffle and you're playing, you know, quarter notes here, you play the upbeat here, and you got da ga da ga da ga da ga da, you know, which you know, Cobham and Alex Van Halen and all those guys. But let me give credit where it's due. The first time someone did that was Carmine, first song, first side on the first Cactus album, Parchment Farm. That was the first dig-a-dag-a-dig-a-dag-a-dig-a-dag, you know, double bass
Okay.
shuffle. And what he was doing was playing time on his left foot and playing in between, you know. And you know, so that's how I played double bass for years and years. Good Rats, all that stuff, just
Yeah.
play time with my left foot.
Yeah.
And I'd get like, oh man, your double bass stuff is killing. And I'd be like, my double bass sucks. I mean, all I'm doing is playing shuffles and 16th notes. I'm not doing anything. And that evolved into writing a drum book. You know,
Yeah.
I kind of turned it around. And I would talk to every drummer. I'd corner Terry at a NAMM show. Terry, so I know you're playing like time on your left foot and you're filling them with your right, but like then you come out of the roll on your left foot on the one. He goes, no, I just play a double right at the end. And I was like, no, I don't want.
You're like, ah, rats. Yeah. No, but
The only guy that was turning it around and playing, you know, the way I play now was Steve Smith.
okay. Wow. I
Yeah.
thought you were going to say Simon Phillips, Steve
Nope.
Smith.
Steve Smith. Steve, and you know, we were always two wing nuts talking all this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, Steve really gave me the confidence to, you know, turn things around. And I started leading with my right foot, and that evolved into a system of playing. And that's kind of my drum book. And you know what's cool about it, what I like about it is like I like playing rhythms on the bass drums, you know, like where and I like having a systematic way of doing it
Yeah.
because like the idea comes here and I want it to just come out. I don't want to have to think about how I'm going to do it, you know. So you know, and it's very much like a guitar strum, you know, like a guitar. You strum on the guitar, do gak gak gak, do gak gak gak, and we'll do bap bap bap, do bap bap, do get the gak, do get the gak, you know, that kind of thing. And I got into that mode. I said, well, this is really cool. I started writing out some beats. I started writing out some hand foot combination, linear stuff. And that led to double bass drumming,
Yeah.
which is, you know, something
Which is
I'm
the
really,
Bible I want everybody who doesn't
Well,
know
it
about this
was.
book. It
There's
really
so
is.
much out there that's so amazing, and there's such amazing players. But it's a nice foot in the door to getting your feet working on two kick drums. Um, what guys are doing today, it's like there's no separation between hands and feet. I
It's
mean,
yeah,
there are guys that are playing, like Gatterments with their feet.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah.
But
Uh,
what I always loved, I mean, and I've seen you play many times, from that first time I saw you at Descensos, is how musical you are when you play double bass drums. And it reminds me of like the way Carmine would use them melodically, and Ginger, as you say, Ginger, and
yeah.
guys like Steve and Simon and Rod. I mean, and Terry, like all my favorite guys are. There's speed when you need it and when you want it, but it's just not that. It's just you're correct me if I'm wrong, but your thing is not just playing them as fast as you can. It's like it's the whole melodic idea of it being another voice in the kit, your left foot, and it's way more
Yeah.
interesting to me that
I
way.
like being able to play rhythms, rather than
Yeah.
just a burst of double bass. And I was guilty of doing nothing but a burst of double bass.
Yeah,
And
you've got the speed.
sometimes, and this is, younger drummers out there, sometimes when there's like a kind of a kink in the road, and there's nothing happening, or you got kicked out of your band, or this and that happened, turn that into creative energy. In my case, in the early 80s, the Good Rats was kind of petering out, and I joined this Canadian band just to do a tour, and I came back in 83.
Chilliwack.
Yes, yes.
Chilliwack, great band.
That
Yeah.
was that was a great band. Jimmy Einer, no, Donnie Einer, Jimmy's brother, called me into the office one day, and he played me that new record, and I was like, "Wow, this is great!" Well, they need a drummer, and they're doing the big arena tour of Canada, and blah blah blah, and so it was kind of like, time to make a move. But when I came back from that, after playing in Good Rats for 10 years, playing like 8 days a week,
Yeah.
all of a sudden I didn't have a band. And then it was like, I'm going to write that drum book. That is probably one of the best pieces of advice I can give to any drummer. Turn something into positive energy. I didn't have a gig. If I did have a gig, I wouldn't have the time to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I did do the drum book, it just stayed on my kitchen table for a year. I
Yeah.
was living out in Huntington, out in Long Island, and I had a studio in my basement. So I would spend all morning with a pot of coffee writing out stuff, and then I'd go down and play. And then what I did is to try the stuff out. I started teaching 2 days a week at the Long Island Drum Center, and that Dennis Ricky is still running.
Yes. Yeah.
Shout out to Dennis. And it was really cool. And I met some really amazing students who have become lifelong friends. That's the greatest thing about teaching. You meet, there's certain guys that are just like your friends for life.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's very gratifying. And I was sharing this information with them, and kind of like, not in a selfish way, but then kind of like, gee, I hope this stuff is valid. And when they were eating it up, and they were really, coming back with it. And so yeah, 83 is when I put that out. But
That's amazing. It's
yeah.
well, I think the fact that Frank Bellucci is watching right now and is saying it's the best double bass drum book, that seals the
I
deal for
love that
me.
guy.
I do too, and he's a
What a
fine
drummer.
drummer. What an amazing drummer, amazing human, plays great double bass drums, and he's giving you his endorsement as it's the best book. So
No,
I think we leave it at
Cheech.
that. Huge. Um, so 83, coming up on 40 years,
Yeah.
and I gotta throw this out there because when David Frangione and I were talking about this the other day, and he told me that MD now has the book, you can get it, and David Hakeem, they were saying you can get it digitally, you can download it, or you can still get the print version of it through Modern Drummer. So all you double bass drum players out there, if you don't have this book, you really have to have it. It really is. I mean, it's, I don't think I'm the only one that feels this way. It really is you know, the Bible, as it were, of double bass drum books.
Well,
That's
thank you so much. There's a lot of great material out there, but I'm really fortunate that I was able to put this together that long ago. And we spoke, David Frangione and David Hakim. We spoke about doing something as a 40th anniversary thing for the book. So
right.
we'll put our heads together and do something cool next year.
So now that, as you were saying at the beginning, we're kind of coming out of this crazy time. What do you see yourself? What do you think the next project or the next thing is you'll be doing? Do you envision maybe going back on the road with anybody? Is there any
I don't know, I like to stay in great shape so I'm ready for anything.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, sometimes I think I just want to put together a bar band and play like do what you're doing.
Oh,
you
that's
know,
great. Yeah.
I just like to play, and I like education. Do I want to go out there and do drum clinics and all that kind of stuff? No, I don't think so.
Mm.
But I want to do something educational. I just haven't figured it out. Maybe I'll do some videos and put them on YouTube. You think that would catch on?
I don't know. That YouTube thing, I
No,
don't know. I think
people
it's
don't. No.
it's a, you
Well,
know what? I'm so glad you said that though, because well, I sort of, no, not the YouTube part, but, talking about the book, I guess in my mind implied that you're an educator, but it really, I want to spend a minute on that and tell everybody that, and I think we have a pretty, educated audience of who Joe Franco is watching right now, because there's so many people watching, but for anybody who doesn't know, you're a tremendous educator. I mean, one of the best educators, really. I mean, again, someone actually, if you scroll back, you'll find it. Someone said it was one of the best clinics they ever saw. Was a clinic you did some years ago, and again, I've seen several
thank
in
you.
different places. Yeah, you're and gotta give props to Carmine too, because I've seen a few of his clinics where, I think it's so difficult, I think, to be able to wear both of those hats the way you do, the way that Carmine does, the way that a lot of these great drummers and educators are able to do. There's some tremendous educators that maybe, when it, they don't have the sort of, I don't want to say wow factor, or the sort of resume as a recording artist maybe that you have, and that, do you know what I'm saying? But you're able to take both of those parts of it. Like you've got the resume as a player and the education.
Well, yeah, I thank you. I find it very natural. I love, but I don't think I'm different than most other drummers. I think drummers like to, hey, that was just right, left, right, foot. That I mean, drummers like doing that.
Yeah.
We like sharing the knowledge. It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
To turn somebody onto something. I good at it? Please, I used to get so nervous when I did a drum clinic, because you go up there and you play.
Yeah.
That's easy. Then now what? Yeah, and because I'm really good on a one-on-one, but put me in front of an audience, I'm not the lead singer. You know what I mean? It's a really different. It's a different thing until someone asks the first question,
Yeah.
because then, even though you're talking to an audience, you're addressing it to one person. And one-on-one I'm good at. Being a public speaker and doing that whole thing. I mean, there are so many guys that do it so amazingly well. But it's good to hear that people are learning something from me. So
Absolutely. No,
I'm happy to hear that.
I think you're being humble, because I know what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying in terms of like one-on-one versus a big crowd, but you
Yeah, much
definitely
easier.
know how to work the big room too. I've seen you do it. You make everybody feel comfortable. You're funny. You're you. You know what I mean? You just come up, you're smiling, and typically when you're done playing the drum solo, to me that would be the hardest part. But when you're done with that, it definitely leaves people kind of catching their breath anyway. So you've it gives people something to talk about.
Well, it's nice to spend some quality time with you, John. And I know there's an audience out there, but this is just great to see you.
It's great to see you too, buddy. I know. I you know, I think about a lot of great hangs too. I was thinking about the Zildjian Day in New York in 1990, and you're talking about
1990.
1990 at the
Nirvana, the Indian restaurant.
oh my
We get back to the hotel, the Mayflower, and Lenny's Tending Bar.
okay, so yes, yes, you're one of the few people that can remember that night.
I remember Lenny's room. I remember Kenny Aronoff jumping up and down on Lenny's
On the
bed. I mean, you know,
you
there's
remember,
certain moments that, you know, they're
you
just
remember
etched in stone.
Kenny jumping on the table at Nirvana too? He got up on the table and was like with these big cowboy boots that he used to wear, and he's jumping up and down. And but that was that was
That was a
that
good
was one of
hang.
the yeah. It was an amazing. It was a great Zildjian Day. Steve Smith was there, and Dave Weckl.
Weckl,
Yep.
Alex Acuna,
Yeah.
Kenny. Yeah.
Kenny, maybe a couple other guys. I think Tristan Bowden was there, also there.
Yeah, yeah.
Chris
That,
and
that that was such a trip, you know. Like I went on first, you know, the New York boy. I get out there and like I got like Weckl and Smith pat me on the back. Yeah, break a leg, go get him. It was so exciting, you know.
every
It was really great.
everybody came through that day. But then, like you said, they hang afterward. So everybody. I've told this story before. We I think we went to the bar at the Mayflower to have a drink before dinner. We had a little, and Lenny and Armin opted to sit out dinner. They were just like, yeah, we're just gonna hang back here, and we go out and have this great dinner at this Indian restaurant called Nirvana overlooking Central Park. There's about 10 or 15 of us. At some point, Kenny Aronoff, you know, jumps up on the table and he's doing like a dance or something. We go back to the hotel, and the bar was basically, I think it was technically shut, but Lenny had got behind the bar and he was serving drinks to people. And hotel security shows up, and they're like telling Lenny he has to leave, and he's walking away with like a bottle under his arm. Back to
Wait,
his,
I got to tell a funny story. A
yeah,
bottle under his arm. I have to tell this quick funny story. Um, PAS show in New York, 78 maybe,
oh,
70,
I wasn't at that, so but
79. It was one of those, 79 maybe.
yeah, yeah.
Go to the show, and it happened to be a night that Good Rats were playing, like you know, the Megadome. You know, we opened for Styx at Nassau Coliseum for 2 nights. Okay, so I'm, you know, see Lenny, Lloyd, you know, the three of them,
The
the
Jewops, yeah,
the
yeah,
the Jewops,
yeah.
the junior executives without power. Jim Coffin, Lenny DeMusio, and Lloyd McCausland. So I invite them to the show, you know. And now I don't know if you know Good Rats. We're very irreverent. We're very, you know, I mean, I'm telling the guys, be on your best behavior because I've got these really important industry guys coming backstage tonight, okay? The three of them showed up and they all had bottles under their arm. They get into the dressing room, they break up, come on, let's party.
I can totally picture it. Yeah, yeah. I know these legendary executives that are like, yeah, they're like,
You know, I'm pretty young in my relationship with the company at that time. And I'm like, guys, be on your best behavior, okay?
I have to
Man,
make,
those guys taught us how to party.
yeah, I know, man, I know. They could hang. You know, I wanted to read you. There was a a comment from Jim Catalano that I'm not seeing,
Jim.
unfortunately. But I
Well,
think
well,
it had to
Jim
do
was
with
at,
Premiere.
he was at, yeah, exactly. When they were at Elkhart, and he was working with Jim Coffin. And that was my first drum endorsement in 77 or 8, you know, around that era.
Yeah,
Um,
yep.
but
And
hi, Jim.
yeah, and Jim just said PAS 1979 NYC.
79,
So
okay.
so he was there, and Jim's a great cat. Yeah, and he well, you'll see it afterward. There's a great comment that Jim put up there, just recalling his time at Premiere and working with you, and yeah, everybody that knows you, Joe, knows that you know you're just one of the good guys, one of the
One
good
of the
rats.
one of the wing nuts. We're not forever.
This is great. Well, this is great. We're kind of running out of time here, so I want to thank you so much for doing this today and being my first guest and my sort of new platform with Modern Drummer. And I can't think of a better guy to have be the first show for this. So thanks so much for being here today.
Well, thank you.
And a big hand for Joe Franco, the great Joe Franco. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Joe Franco Double Bass Drumming Book. Joe Franco presents an organized discussion of this powerful and consistent sound in a method he calls the single stroke system. Focusing on beats, fills, and soloing over the double bass roll, this book provides practical applications that will guide a single bass drum player into the world of playing two bass drums. Joe Franco Double Bass Drumming DVD. Playing with artists such as Twisted Sister, Leslie West, Vinnie Moore, and Jack Bruce, Joe Franco shares his incredible technique, featuring the first practical approach to playing double bass drums.
D-Drum is rolling out a new addition to their line of products called the Eflex electronic drum set. It features mesh heads on all three toms, a dual-zone snare pad, two cymbal pads, a hi-hat pad, and two pedal triggers. The responsiveness and feel on the drums is preserved while maintaining a simple and compact configuration. The all-in-one approach D-Drum took with this kit makes life easier for any drummer from beginner to pro. The Eflex package includes a throne, a pair of sticks, and a stick holder. The included sounds are arranged into 12 preset drum kits, and there is a built-in metronome. Everything mounts on an easily adjustable rack system that can be configured to fit any player's needs. The entire Eflex kit can be ready to play 15 minutes after taking it out of the box. While not overcomplicating itself, this set still provides the necessary features and components that drummers come to expect with electronic drum sets. Both the crash and the ride cymbals are equipped with a choke function, and the ride pad has an additional bell zone as well. The pedal controller's feel is consistent and uniform. A nice feature and flexibility is that the Eflex includes a double bass mode, which allows the hi-hat controller to be used as a second bass drum pedal trigger. The 12 preset drum kits provide a range of sounds for different musical styles. This includes rock, jazz, funk, metal, EDM, and percussion. There are also 3 live presets for the rock, jazz, and EDM kits. The live setting adds a touch of reverb to the drum sound, filling the sonic space a bit more naturally. The GM Standard, GM Room, and GM Power presets are 3 different effect options that give the player a slightly bigger toolbox of sounds when you are searching for the perfect drum sound. Although dynamic range and sensitivity is usually slightly limited for electronic drums, the Eflex kit provides a pretty accurate representation of the dynamic range of what's actually being played. The sensors in the drums detect the velocity of the stick in order to replicate the actual dynamics well. The Eflex does this important job fine for its price range. Whether you're a seasoned player that needs a low-volume practice solution or a beginner looking for a budget-friendly first step into drumming, the D-Drum Eflex electronic drum set is a safe bet with a big sound and a small footprint. MSRP is $529, and you can find this on ddrum.com.